The men behind me are two of the worst serial killers in US history, and a lot of people don't know about them. They are responsible for one of the most disturbing audio recordings in history, and an FBI profiler said that this man is one of the most depraved individuals he's ever worked with. This is the story of the Toolbox Killers. Reminder that I tell a lot of dark true crime stories on this channel. Severe discretion is advised, but follow along if you want to hear more. The Toolbox Killers are comprised of these two men. This is Lawrence Bittaker and this is Roy Norris. These two had a penchant for the mistreatment of women, and they bring the absolute worst out in each other. And they were given the nickname the Toolbox Killers because the weapons they used against their victims were things that you would usually find in a toolbox, like pliers, ice picks, sledgehammers, you name it. So let's talk about Lawrence Bittaker first. He was born September 27th, 1940, and was given up for adoption at birth. He was arrested for the first time when he was 12 and became a repeat offender. He's reported to have a very high IQ of 138, but he dropped out of high school, and he spent a good amount of time in a juvenile detention center. Let's talk about Roy Norris now. He also had a difficult childhood. Apparently, he spent a lot of time bouncing around foster homes. He reports to experiencing a lot of CSA during that time. They both claim that their childhoods affected them a great deal, and they both turned to a life of crime, which actually brings us to how they met. So these two actually met in prison. Roy Norris was serving time for the essay against a 27-year-old woman, and Lawrence Bittaker was serving time for attempted murder. Apparently he stole a steak from a grocery store, and somebody asked if he was going to pay for that. And his response was to stab the person in the chest. So these two meet, and they take a liking to each other pretty quickly. They discovered that they both have a penchant for sadism, and apparently they would meet every day and fantasize about how they would attack girls. Roy Norris is actually quoted as saying that seeing frightened young girls is his biggest turn-on. So these two came up with a plan. Their magnum opus, if you will. They decided that once they were both released from prison, they were going to essay, torture, and murder a teenage girl from the ages of 13 to 18. And when they were released, they put their plan into motion. So the Toolbox Killers put their plans into motion in 1979. They bought a windowless van that they nicknamed Murder Mac because it was tricked out to help them commit their crimes and to prevent people from escaping. And for the next 4 months, they practiced how to commit these crimes. They spent this time picking up over 20 hitchhikers, but they didn't harm anybody because they were just treating it like practice. But their modus operandi would be to pick up children off the side of the road, torture them in their van, and take their lives. So let's talk about their crimes a little bit. Just a warning, they are terrible, these crimes, and they're all against women, so I completely understand if you do not want to listen. They had a total of 5 victims between the ages of 13 and 18. Their first victim was Cindy Schaefer, who was 16 years old and was walking home from church. Andrea Hall was 18 when she was hitchhiking on the Pacific Coast Highway. Leah Lamp was 13 and Jackie Gilliam was 15. They were both hitchhiking as well. They were each picked up because they were offered a friendly lift to where they needed to go, and then the tides turned very quickly once they were in the van. Cindy Schaefer was strangled with a coat hanger. Andrea Hall had an ice pick shoved into her ear. Leah Lamp was bludgeoned with a sledgehammer, and Jackie Gilliam had 2 ice picks shoved into her ears. And just to add to their depraved disrespect, they would just dump their bodies over a canyon or embankments. Cindy Schaefer and Andrea Hall's bodies still have never been found. Let's talk about Shirley Ledford because she was their last victim and how they wound up getting caught. Shirley Ledford was 16 years old. This happened Halloween night. She was walking home from a Halloween party. She was offered a ride from the Toolbox Killers in their windowless van, and she accepted. She suffered the same things that these other girls suffered, and they used a coat hanger to take her life. But they decided to do a couple things differently with her. For one, the Toolbox Killers decided that they wanted the press's attention, so instead of dumping her body into a canyon, they put the lifeless body of Shirley Ledford on someone's lawn, which was discovered the next day. They also did this. They recorded the entire crime with Shirley Ledford. And it is reported to be one of the most disturbing things ever recorded. Couple side notes about this horrible audio tape that they made. For one, apparently it's so disturbing that both the lawyers and the jurors wept while it was played in trial. And the tape is still in the possession of the FBI, which is actually used to train and desensitize FBI agents to the reality of what torture and murder are like. Just a few weeks after Shirley Ledford was discovered, Roy Norris started blabbing to one of his prison buddies about all of these crimes that he and Lawrence Bittaker were committing. His friend was horrified. He reported them, and they were arrested. When the police searched their apartment, they found everything. They found the weapons that they used, they found Polaroids, and most importantly, they found the recording of Shirley Ledford. Roy Norris took a plea deal in which he would agree to testify against Lawrence Bittaker, and in exchange, they would not seek the death penalty for him. He was sentenced to 45 years to life with eligibility for parole in 2010. Lawrence Bittaker was sentenced to death. The judge actually said that life in prison would be a reward for somebody like him. However, they both recently just passed away in prison. Lawrence Bittaker in 2019 and Roy Norris in 2020. Thus concluding the story of the Toolbox Killers.